Hello, welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast. We talk about the NBA, which we're doing all together here at the TD Garden on Saturday night before Game 2. Right here, Tim Bontemps.
Hello.
Tim MacMahon. MacMahon, I should say.
Howdy, partners. I would say it's a pleasure to be with you, but I would be lying.
All right. Well, you should be heavy. You should be, how do I want to say it?
Ecstatic.
You should be have pleasure to have our special guest for this episode, one of our favorite guys. We're so happy to have him back. Matt, you know him as Stats, but his real name is Matt. Let's just be clear. Matt Stats Willams.
Thank you guys for having me.
So, Stats, we are one game in. I felt like game one was a pretty heavy outlier for the Mavericks. Just about everything that I've read that you produced for us indicates to me that the Mavericks were totally out of the way they normally play. And I would expect that to sort of correct on Sunday. What are some of the things that you pulled out that we all now know and are smart because of you?
Yeah, so I think I'll start with the ball movement for them. Obviously, the Luka 1 assist was the big thing, right? Fewest in a playoff game in his career, but 6 assist opportunities. Also the fewest in a playoff game in his career. But as a team, they only had 205 passes. That's a scary low number. It was their fewest in any game since player tracking began in 2013-14 as a collective unit. So while the focus was a lot on Luka, it was the entire team. And I give more credit, I think, to the Celtics. And I want your thoughts on, is that more of the Celtics defense or maybe the Mavs offense just wasn't gelling like they normally do?
They played tight, MacMahon, don't you think?
Oh, they did. And it was interesting because Jason Kidd said both that the Mavericks need to move the ball more and that Luka just needs to take and make the layup. So kind of conflicting there. But, his point as far as like Luka driving, it's like, hey, if they are going to prioritize taking away the lobs and making sure that the those lasers to the corners aren't available, then you can only do so much. And, Luka's going to have the chance to finish there. Luka took 26 shots, 12 of 26. Obviously, is not his most efficient work, but almost half of those were three-pointers. He's basically saying, hey, if they're going to prioritize your passing, make them pay with scoring. But the Celtics can switch everything. They're so versatile defensively. Obviously, 3 elite defenders plus Tatum, and then Porzingis as a rim protector. I do think this is, just the arsenal of defenders that they have and the style that they play is going to make it tough for the Mavericks to play with the kind of ball movement that they have through the first 3 rounds.
Well, look, we talked about it like going into game one. This is probably the single best team equipped to guard Jason Tate or Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving in the entire NBA, and we saw that in game one where these guys didn't double team at all, like they never do, and as a result, they didn't allow Dallas to get any of these open looks on the perimeter. And PJ Washington's had one good shooting series in the playoffs. He has not looked like that player most of the rest of the time. Derrick Jones Jr. is an okay shooter, but not a guy you're going to really be worried about. And Kyrie Irving has struggled against the Celtics a lot, and they have probably the 2 best guys to guard him in the league, maybe, and Derek White and Jrue Holiday, and he went 6 for 19. So, a lot of this you could say the 2 stars on Dallas need to play better. You also could say game one more or less went the way, if you're the Celtics, you expect it to go in terms of them sticking to what their game plan is and what they're trying to do. And if they execute that way 3 more times in this series, I think it's going to be very hard for Dallas to win it.
So 205 passes. Stats, you may not know off the top of your head, but how many passes does a team normally throw in a game?
I would say roughly 280 to 290 is like the league average-ish. Obviously, like Warriors and I think Pacers are toward the top of the league in kind of the over 300 range, but right around there. So 205 is a very, very small number. Yeah. And I'll add 315 total touches for the team, the fewest by any team in any game all season.
Yeah, and basically what happened was
they were frozen.
Luka and Kyrie got the ball and the ball stuck. And look, that might happen again in game 2. And they might make enough tough shots to where it doesn't matter.
That's when you have not a good passing night. This is like historically awful. It was frozen. The ball wasn't moving at all.
Yeah. Now my point is, if you're going to play that style, you want to have 2 of the best creators in the league. But even then, like, you want those guys to be getting the ball sometimes in situations where they have the advantage. But they felt like Kyrie actually got better looks than 6 of 19 would indicate.
I agree.
But Jaylen Brown, Celtics' best player, which we'll get into later, he made every dribble tough on Luka. I mean, there was a couple times he picked Luka at half court and went in and dunked it on the other end.
Stats, yeah, he definitely did force some turnovers. Stats taught me though that Luka was actually 4 or 5 shooting against Jaylen Brown. The interesting thing that happened, Joe Mazzulla didn't get asked this today, but I am expecting that he will not change his starting lineup, that Porzingis will come off the bench, even though Porzingis stats right.
Chris Stapps told Armalake Andrews he will be coming off the bench in game 2.
Stats, wasn't there a note that he'd only come off the bench maybe one time? And
one time in his career, 2017. It's the only other time.
In like 470 some games.
Yes.
So this will be the second time in this series. And obviously you don't have to be a Hall of Fame head coach, which by the way, there's all these banners are behind us. If you're watching on YouTube, that we're right at banner level here, all the numbers. You don't have to be a Hall of Famer to know that if you've won 8 straight playoff games, which is what the Celtics have, which is the longest streak in Celtics history, which is saying something, although a lot of those banners were won when there was only 2 series. So you only had to win 8 games. So but anyway, you're not changing the starting lineup when you've won 8 straight games. So that's kind of a no-brainer. But the interesting thing is Horford. Horford as a defender in game 1. Awesome. What are those numbers?
Yeah, so Al Horford, I think, might have been their best defender in game 1. The Mavericks shot 1 of 13 when he contested their shots. And I want to shout out Alex Santiago and Connor Quinn, who do our internal tracking for us. Phenomenal, and they help us out with that. But I think the interesting piece to me was the on-ball screen defense from Horford against Luka. So he allowed 0.29 points per chance. I'd say roughly you want to be in the 1.1 range. 0.29, scary low. And he switched 53% of the time onto Luka when Luka ran ball screens and Horford's a screen defender.
They were saying, give me Al Horford.
And he was okay with it.
Because why would they do that? Well, because the other options are Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday, Derek White, and Jason Tatum. So, yeah, you're going to go after the 62-year-old big guy, but that 62-year-old big guy is still switchy, can still hold his own. I think the Mavericks will try to go at him again and see how much those numbers hold up. But, when they have Horford there, they can switch everything. Porzingis, you want to keep him closer to the rim. But, man, I thought Porzingis, as good as he was offensively, I thought Porzingis made just as big an impact, if not more, as a rim protector on defense. He was swatting everything in that first quarter.
Well, and he got isolated against Kyrie Irving and blocked his shot in the first quarter on the perimeter, right? I mean, the Celtics showed they were not going to be worried about Sam Hauser getting switched onto somebody. He played very well in individual settings. Porzingis was fine. Al Horford was more than fine. To me, Horford looked like a guy who had 10 days off and looked like a guy who was back to playing 25 minutes. When Al's been under 30 minutes in the playoffs, he's been really good. Whenever he gets over 30 minutes as a guy who's 37, it has not looked very good. And obviously, getting Kristaps Porzingis back, having him take Luke Kornet's minutes, playing 25-ish minutes a game, that's going to be a huge boost. And I'm not surprised the Celtics are going to stick with the same starting lineup. And we saw in game 1, they pretty much matched up Porzingis with Derek Lively, and it was very effective. And I suspect that's going to be something that at least carries forward into game 2 unless Dallas immediately does make the starting lineup change you've talked about for weeks.
That's the question I'll ask you, MacMahon. So people were wondering whether the Celtics were going to change their starting centers. I think that's a no-brainer no. But what about Dallas's starting lineup?
I would be surprised if they changed that for game 2. I wouldn't completely rule it out at some point this series. But look, they would have loved to play Lively more minutes last game. He got in foul trouble.
Yeah.
So he's got to stay out of foul trouble. I think this is a series where Lively's going to have the minutes tilted in his favor. Gafford, even if he continues to start, I think it's going to be 18 for Gafford, 30 for Lively. Maybe Maxi Kleber gets some minutes at the 5. But just because the Celtics, and we saw they have 7 guys who hit multiple threes in that game, and both Horford and especially Porzingis can shoot it.
Stats educated me that that's the most ever in a finals game. Isn't that right?
That is correct. That's a finals record, having 7 guys with 2 threes.
But because they can play that 5-out style and excel playing that 5-out style, and then Porzingis can shoot it from, that left eye of Lucky's that Kyrie stomped on back in the day. Lively
Again,
is
I'd like
just,
to refer to Mr. Williams here on the length of shooting that I just want to show what this guy can do for us.
yes.
What do we know about the length of Porzingis'
Even makes
shots?
Brian look smart. That's where we're at.
Yeah. So
My secret is being unmasked here. I can't believe I'm doing this. All right, go ahead. Go ahead, Stats.
So in game one, he made 2 3-pointers. Both were 30-footers. And for the entire season, his average made 3-point distance, 27.1 feet if you include regular season playoffs. Only Trae Young and Brook Lopez have a longer average distance when they make threes. And that's what I think is so fascinating with Porzingis is the defense piece is incredible. One of the best rim protectors in the league. But this is a guy that can make 30-footers, but can also post you up on the elbow over and over and over and get the mismatch that he wants. And I thought the Celtics were phenomenal in finding that mismatch around the elbow to where he's taking on guys that are 6, 7, 8 inches shorter than him. He's not even seeing them. He just sees the basket and can make that jumper consistently.
And that's the thing that's made him successful as a post player all year. It hasn't necessarily been that he's been getting the ball thrown to him on the low block. Like the reason we've talked about a bunch how effective his post numbers are is because they've done it in situations where he can take advantage of mismatches at that elbow spot on the perimeter. And he's been a huge weapon for them. And obviously Boston played a soft schedule getting to the finals, but I think it was pretty dramatically overlooked that Porzingis had not played in the final 9 or 10 games of their run. I know they went 9-1. I know they didn't play teams that were that good, but I just thought coming into the series, it was completely discounted that they were getting back a 20-point-a-game 7-footer who's a tremendous rim protector and a great shooter. And I didn't think he was going to have the best quarter of his career, which he did in the first quarter of game one, but you could see just having him out there for those 25 minutes. You have Al Horford out there for 25 minutes, and now you get gaps in between all these games where Horford in particular can have energy and feel good going into these games. Celtics dominated this game and Jason Tatum wasn't even that good. Like that's where this game to me was exactly the blueprint.
Yeah,
that
I
Boston
agree
was
with you.
looking
I
for.
think, well, go ahead, MacMahon.
I was going to say the thing about Porzingis is he'd been off for, what was it, like 5.5
38
weeks?
days, I
right.
believe.
And so who knew, like there was obviously no sign of rust. Not only had he been off for 38 days, he was in this completely unfamiliar role of coming off of the bench.
Playing his first game out of the first round ever in his career.
Yeah. I mean, right. By far the deepest he'd ever in the playoffs, the most pressure-packed game that he'd ever been in, unless you count the game 7 against the Clippers, which he'll tell you all he did in that game was stood in the corner and picked his nose. And so we didn't know what version of Porzingis they would get, and what they got was like the peak version. And yeah, if they get the peak version of Porzingis throughout the series, that is a massive problem for the Mavericks.
As you've been saying, Bontemps, I think you're right. I think what the Celtics did, other than maybe the outlier of Porzingis being super red hot, I think what the Celtics did was play their game.
100%.
I think what they did was repeatable. I think what we're talking about here is that the Mavericks were way below their game. So what the Mavericks have to do is lift their game back up, ideally to where they normally have been, or even a little bit, and hope the Celtics come down a little bit. But this was, I mean, even
the Celtics have room to go up too. Like that was probably a
Tatum.
B.
Tatum. Yeah, there was an A in the first quarter, but then after that, I would say it was a C.
I mean,
they only shot 33% on threes after the first quarter.
Yep.
Tatum was so mediocre that he got demoted to their second best player during today's press conference.
We'll talk about that in a second. I want to say one more thing because you mentioned Lively. Lively was the number 1 plus-minus player in the West Finals. Is that right?
Number 2 behind Kyrie.
Okay, but before he got hurt, he was number
Yes.
1. Okay, I think Stats he was their worst plus-minus guy in Game 1.
Yeah, I think it was him and maybe Maxi Kleber was also
Maxey
minus
had
15.
I don't know if
and,
Kleber's
and
gonna
Kyrie
stay
was
in the-
minus 19. So
I'm not sure.
I heard you say that. I disagree with that.
You're backwards on
I
that.
really disagree. Maxey, they need Maxey in this series. Now, Maxey's also coming off of an injury. He did play the last couple games in the West Finals. He definitely looks hesitant to shoot the ball with that right shoulder injury.
dudes,
But
he looked terrible.
I'm just telling you, if Maxey's he might be their best matchup option to defend Tatum.
If they go to 2 centers and not 3, I think Daniel Gafford is the one who's losing minutes.
I would agree with
not
that.
Maxi Kleber.
And
not Derek
Maxey
Lively.
also allows them to play that big lineup where he's ideally next to Lively, where they can be big but also still be switchable. I would be
Okay.
very surprised if Maxi's
If
a
he's-
a rotation yank in
That's
this series.
fine, but did you see how he played? Did you feel he performed well?
Well,
in
that's
game one?
there's
I
two
believe
different
that-
things here. One is that he didn't play great in game one. The other is that in this series, it's a bad Daniel Gafford series, and the things that Maxi Kleber does are things that will help them defend the Celtics because the Celtics stress them in ways that no other team has in the playoffs so far.
I also think Kyrie Irving stunk it up in game one, and I'm pretty sure they'll stick with him.
That's right, because Kyrie and Maxi are the exact same. I agree. Okay, so you mentioned this a couple of times, MacMahon. We're in the press conference today. Jason Kidd is giving, very basic answers. There was nothing very exciting, which is what a lot of press conferences are on off days in the finals. And then it's announced his last question, by the way. They say last question. Question comes, again, a generally basic question about how hard it is to defend or how hard it is to deal with Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown did have an excellent game in game one. I think he had 22 points on 12 shots. He had three blocks and 3 steals. Stats, what was the stat?
Yeah, so it's first time in his career regular season playoffs. He had 3 steals and 3 blocks in a game.
And what was it? The Celtics had 2 guys with 20 points and 3 blocks. That was the first
Yeah,
time.
first time since Parrish and McHale in '85. Same playoff game.
Pretty
Any
good.
playoff game.
Pretty
Right.
good. Pretty good stat
So-
there.
so-
Some
so-
stats Williams.
So Jaylen Brown had a very good game. But then what did he say, MacMahon?
And I just looked it up so I can quote precisely. Well, Jaylen is their best player. Just looking at what he does defensively, he picked Luka up full court. He got to the free throw line. He did everything. And that's what your best player does.
Just in case you missed it the first
yes,
time.
and,
to make
and
sure.
he continued, but the important thing is Jaylen's their best player. Hey, in case you doofuses in the media didn't hear me throw that
or
smoke
in
bomb in the
case you- in
Celtics
case-
locker room,
Right.
he's their best player. Did you guys hear that? Go make that the storyline. We want the Celtics to hear this. Hey, go ask Tatum that. Go ask Brown that. First take, get up, everybody. The
Joe Mazzulla.
storyline here is this is Jaylen Brown's team. Tatum can't carry him in the fight. I mean, J Kidd and the Celtics knew what he was doing, but J Kidd absolutely said, "Hey, let's make this a Tatum Brown storyline." And I'm real slick. I'm real
and he
slick
said
with
it, and he said it with a bleep-eaten grin on his face too. He knew exactly what he was doing. And Jason Kidd has been around for a very long time. He got drafted 30 years ago this month. He has been in locker rooms where there have been divisive situations. He has often been in the middle, personally, of divisive situations. And I thought it was very interesting. He went to this today. I know you could say, well, maybe he just got an opportunity and said, what the hell, I'll go for it.
Well, he got
But
asked directly about Jaylen Brown, so it was sort of sitting there on the
it
tee.
was, but it's still a little bit, it feels like a little bit of a desperate move to do this ahead of game 2.
I don't know about desperate. I think he thought about doing it and saw an opportunity and did it.
Well, and that's certainly true. And I think, I said coming into the series, I thought, I've been around the Celtics for several years now, and I felt like this was the best mental space they've been in as a group the whole time. After all the stuff they've been through, the way they've gone through the season, the way they've gone through the playoffs, the breaks they've had, they're physically rested and ready to go. They're emotionally ready. I felt like they were mentally ready. And you watch how Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum handled this today. There was no...
Well, how did they handle it?
They handled it by saying, both of them, that we wouldn't be in this position without the other guy. We've heard this before. We're not going to let any of this stuff get us messed up. And we're focused on what's in front of us. And look, the Celtics' biggest problem for years has been getting in their own way. This is a team that has been barely over 500 at home the last 3 years and has one of the best road records over a 3-year span in NBA history in the playoffs. Why? Because they lose focus and they don't stay disciplined enough all the time. And especially not at home where they get relaxed. Like, hey, we got this incredible home court advantage. We're going to be fine. And I mean, Tatum and Brown have talked about it. Tatum, especially to me, when they go on the road, they think, hey, we're on the road. We're going to get a team's best shot at home. We got to be ready. We got to come. We got to be disciplined, focused, locked in, ready to go. And you saw in game 1, they come out, they play great. Dallas immediately gets back in the game, start of the third quarter. You think, hey, are the Celtics going to implode here? Is Dallas going to have its latest big comeback and win? Celtics go on a 14-0 run, turn the game around. And then today, if one of them said anything that became a thing, would have been 24 hours of, oh man, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown going at each other. What's going to happen? And instead, they both easily knocked it away, said all the right things. And it's obviously still going to be talked about till tomorrow night, but it's not going to become some huge controversy between the two of them. And I think it's just the latest sign that these guys are as locked in as a group as I've seen them in all the time I've been around them.
Well, see, Jason Kidd understands offense and teaching and bonding with star players. He doesn't understand news cycles.
Oh, yes, he does.
Well, no, because
he's been in a few news cycles.
No, I know, but you can't create controversy on a Saturday afternoon. Create controversy, going into a Monday morning.
if he had said this today and Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown had taken the bait, it would have been a thing for the next 24 hours. No, but I mean, it would have been a thing. Now it's going to be people talking about Jason Kidd instead of how did Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown respond to what Jason Kidd said.
And part of the conversation is clearly like Jay Kidd was trying to throw
100%
a stink bomb in the Celtics locker room. And I mean, Tatum
called him on.
Yeah. I asked Tatum what he thought about, what was his reaction to this? And, no reaction. It's a team sport, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm thinking, okay, I got to ask a follow-up of why do you think Jay Kidd would say that? What was his intent? Well, no, he got right to it. He said, we understand that people try to drive a wedge between us. I guess it's a smart thing to do or try to do. We've been in this position for many of years of guys trying to divide us and say that one of us should be traded or one is better than the other. So it's not our first time at the rodeo.
You like that. He
knew
he was talking to MacMahon. He's like, I'm going to give you a rodeo reference,
That's right,
buddy.
And by the way, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I'm not sure that that's the answer from him or from Jaylen Brown. I think those guys have been through a ton of stuff. They've matured as a group a lot. I think you've seen them be mature in the way they've gone through these playoffs. They haven't played great for 48 minutes all the time, but they've been awesome in the clutch over and over again in the playoffs, a place where they've struggled in the past. And again, like they just are in a totally different place than they were last year or 2 years ago or the year before that from a mental focus and discipline standpoint as a group. I think they're in a really good place.
Also, when they were coming into the press conference, they knew the kid said it. And by the way,
I know, but I'm telling you that none of that would have mattered in the past. They wouldn't have handled it this way.
These couches up here. There's like these couches up here. I'm sorry. I think
come sit up here later.
This is like the.
No, over there he's talking about.
This is like low key, like a pretty sweet area.
Straight over there.
Well, people can't. They can't see it, Bontemps.
I know. I'm just saying to this guy because he got up and what is he doing?
All right. Well, anyway,
trying to get like a
sit down.
I'm just saying this might be a low key, awesome place to watch a game.
He's trying to get a couch sent to his house. You might get it.
I don't want it sent to the house. I just want it sent down.
Put it in the pool house, maybe.
I want it sent to the media.
By the way, speaking of goodies that Wendy gets, are we going to discuss the OVO jacket? That is now in
MacMahon's
my
OVO jacket?
Is now in my possession. I didn't get one.
Did Stats get an OVO jacket?
I did not.
We got to rectify that.
I got missed out. No, not like Wendy though. Wendy rocked it.
Yeah, we have this little show on ESPN digital platforms called Hoop Streams, and we
said it's a little show.
Yeah, it's a little show. Yeah, it's a little show we have, and I believe you two were on it.
Correct.
Yeah, that made it a big show.
Between two Tims.
Between two Tims.
That's right. With the great Cassidy Hubbard.
Yeah. So, they had some jackets for us. I'm not sure.
Jackets for
incorrect.
You. They didn't have one for Bontemps or me.
Is this
I had to beg
the best
to get
time
yours.
to be wearing Drake gear?
Well, there's that.
Did you know what October's very own meant, Brian?
No clue.
Yeah.
I had no. I knew that OVO was his line of something, but I didn't know that it stood for October.
Was the jacket fire?
People said it was fire.
No, well.
Yeah,
you're the expert on fire or not. So
it also weighed about 12 pounds, and I was like, I don't know if I need to be taking this to Texas with me. So I gave it to MacMahon.
Listen, it was just a very
I'm
delightful
disappointed
thing
you're not wearing
do.
it today. I expect you to be wearing it tomorrow at the game.
So it is June. It's a little hot for like a thick Letterman.
Might not
jacket.
quite be as hot as it will be in Dallas in a couple days.
I'll
it's
have
still
you know
warm.
that I won 3 letters in high school. 3 athletic
for
letters.
debate and what else?
For golf.
Oh, that doesn't count.
I had a Letterman jacket.
Golf's not a sport. Golf is not a sport.
Bontemps said he won like 12 letters.
How many did I win?
Oh,
8,
please.
10?
Bontemps doesn't
Something
know
like
12
that.
letters.
One of us might not know 12 letters. It's not me. I feel confident about that.
Stats, tell us a little bit about what you do during the game, because I want to know this myself.
Yes. So I'll start with the pregame stuff. So I write a packet for Mike Breen, JJ Redick, and Doris Burke.
That we steal.
The great Doris Burke, by the way. Congrats to DB, calling first female to call a NBA Finals game.
Her performance was better than the Mavericks.
Obviously.
Hers is better than the Celtics, but go on.
But yes, so and then I hope Doris will hit me with questions. We'll go back and forth on stuff. I'll send her some stuff that may not be in the package. She'll ask me stuff.
Excuse me, sir. I want that stuff too. Go ahead.
You're not important enough.
Clearly.
Definitely not the case. And then during the game, I'll be communicating with Doris, normally during commercial breaks, whatever.
You're in the truck.
Yes, I'm in the truck for games 1, 2, and then I'll be in lovely Bristol, Connecticut for 3 through 7.
Here's the thing. The truck is not even in the building. It's like down the street.
Yeah, it's outside the building. But hey, I'm here. That's all that matters.
There you go.
Yeah.
So during the game, I'll communicate with her, and she'll either give it to Mike Breen if it's something good for him, something for JJ Redick if JJ or them.
So you're only talking to Doris. You're not talking to Breen?
Correct. Only to Doris. So I
This
have a Slack with Doris. Communicate back and forth that way.
I'd like access to that Slack too. Thank you.
Again,
so
not important enough.
Clearly.
Well, no, listen, I will
Nor
say
should
this.
you be.
You guys know how tech savvy I am. I mean, I was just flabbergasted by the whole order ahead of Dunkin' Donuts thing. So you can imagine what a challenge it was for me to figure out Slack. And it was worth this extreme effort for one reason. This man sitting to my left.
And his peers.
Yes,
and his crew.
And
his crew.
Stats. But Sig Chat is a big resource for us.
It is the only thing that I use Slack for. The only thing.
Me too.
And then the only person I DM on Slack is right here. Hey, I'm working on this story. Can you help me out with X, Y, and Z? The man delivers every single time.
The lifeblood of our group, Stats Willams.
Yeah. So during the game, what are some of the things that you're monitoring? What are some of the things that the group is monitoring?
Yeah, so I like to go more. I'm more into the tracking stuff. That's kind of my jam. The historical stuff is fun. We do it because we have to, but not really what I prefer.
I think people will be curious. Stats, can you sort of explain how the tracking stuff works both during the game and after the game to give people sort of a sense of when you're getting stuff? Because it's not like you have it all in the moment. Some of it's during, some of it's after.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I think earlier, so we have a group called Stats Analysis. We have 3 or 4 people that are live tracking the game and sending some notes. And then we have like a spreadsheet where it just updates in real time. And it's humans, so live tracking it, contested shots, uncontested shots, assist opportunities, etc. As I mentioned, Alex Santiago leads our group there, and Connor Quinn's kind of like the co-help there. And those two do a phenomenal job helping us out. And so those are kind of the notes that I'm saying to Doris. And I'll say Doris kind of leads me. If Doris says something or she points something out, I think instantly, okay, do I have something to support that? And so during the break, I'll be like, hey, you mentioned this. Here's something to back it up. And I often tell her, when it comes to like the numbers themselves, I kind of like the concept more than the actual numbers, right? And I think that's what I prefer more. Like, I don't want people going out there yelling, hey, he's averaging 0.29 points per chance. That's not how we say things, right? But it's like, hey, Horford crushed it against defending on-ball screens. That's how I prefer. In working with Doris, that's kind of how we've kind of been in lockstep. Post-game, Second Spectrum, who has the cameras up on the top of the arena.
They're probably right above our heads here somewhere.
We might have blacked him out here.
Yeah, so MacMahon had a little bit too much light on his face, and we had to
not quite an angelic figure.
Yeah. So Second Spectrum goes that next level. The passes, the touches, they have now 3D tracking, so you can figure out how kind of the Jalen Brunson thing that I gave to you about how much lift he's getting up on jump shots.
Yes, this is one of the most crazy stats that I've ever gotten, was when he was demonstrating how Jalen Brunson's foot was...
He meaning Stats.
Stats was telling me how Jalen Brunson's foot, we were trying to determine it was affecting his shot. I was like, hey, his shot looks short. Stats was like, well, he's actually jumping 2.65 inches shorter than he does during the season. I was like, how the hell did he know that?
And that's something new this year that Second Spectrum has provided, that 3D pose tracking data. And that's kind of the next wave of saying that information. But all of that is to say is that basically what I try to do is try to take what you all say, what I see, and try to put some type of context behind it. That's always my goal.
MacMahon asks good questions on there, I have to say. And his
MacMahon
question
always asks good questions. I'll give him that.
His question the other night, which elicited that because, we had talked so much about the 57% shooting that the Mavericks were shooting off Luka passes coming in. MacMahon asked, like, midway through the third, maybe late in the third quarter, he's like, how many assist chances has Luka had tonight?
No, I asked that right after he checked out for the game.
Oh, for the game,
they
right.
threw a stat in there that I forgot the exact number, but the Mavs were not a whole lot out of not a whole lot off of.
They only had 7 assists.
Well, by the way, we talked a lot about the lob dunks. 54 lob dunks. Second, Denver Nuggets. I was talking to Stats about this after the game. 0 lob dunks for the Mavs in game 1.
And they really did the 6 potential assists more so than the 1 assist to me is the stat that really stands out, because you can have, it's a make or miss league,
That's more, that speaks to more the functioning of the Celtics defense.
Right. The fact that Luka only had 6 potential assists is a shockingly low number. That's not a case of, he was making passes, he was making plays, his teammates weren't hitting shots, but for them to take away the lob, no lob dunks, for them to take out, I think the Mavs didn't hit a corner 3 until Luka had checked out of the game.
Yeah, Josh Green hit the only corner 3 with under a minute left. They took 3.
Total garbage time.
Yep, they took 3 corner 3s the entire game.
And they were averaging 5 corner 3 makes a game.
And so that's where Luka obviously leads the league in scoring, but he might be at his, and really I thought where he just torched the Wolves in particular was those late lobs off the drives. And then, you're coming in on that. You're trying to take that away. Whoosh, whoosh. He's hitting guys in corners for 3s. And if they're going to take that stuff away, Luka's going to have to be a 40-point per game scorer for the Mavericks to win in this series.
Well,
that's not available.
And they're going to need Kyrie to be a lot better. And even though Kyrie missed some shots he could have hit in that game, again, the Celtics, I think, very smartly have identified if you take Kyrie Irving and he is scoring 15 to 20 a game, I don't see a way Dallas wins this series, because it's got to be, to me, like the Minnesota series where those 2 guys are both awesome, Luka and Kyrie, because the Celtics are going to score. They're the best offense in the history of the league. They had a B-ish performance in game 1. They had 110 points against a really good defense, and we've talked about how well Dallas has played throughout the playoffs, and the Mavs were at 89. That's in large part because Kyrie was at 12 or 14 or whatever he had.
I thought, going back and watching all of Kyrie's shots, absolutely missed open 3s.
Yeah, and the Celtics would say that too. His shot luck was not as good in game 1.
But he struggled. You mentioned Porzingis coming up and blocking his sort of mid-range step back.
Mm-hmm.
Porzingis was on his heels. Kyrie steps back. He's getting that shot off 99% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Porzingis blocked it. Also, when Kyrie got into the lane and shot near the rim, the Celtics were on top of him. So look, he might make some 3s, but it was Kyrie's misses inside the 3-point arc where he's usually so dominant. And Stats, you've had some numbers. I don't remember any coming to today, but the Mavericks have been a dominant paint scoring team. And the paint scoring against the Celtics defense was really down as well.
Yeah, and I'd say part of that was, I think, the focusing, taking away the lobs, as you guys discussed. I'll also say, too, on the Kyrie Irving piece. So he missed 3 threes in that third quarter that were wide open. And that was when they were making that run.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of those where if he had made maybe 1 or 2 of those, could have
got even closer.
Could have different discussion today.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I thought if Kyrie starts making those kind of shots that he normally makes, we'll see what happens the rest of the series.
So MacMahon, the Mavericks are 1-6 in game 1s under Jason Kidd. This is one of those historic stats that I don't love because I really don't care what happened in 2022. That doesn't have anything to do with 2024.
They're 0-3 this postseason.
1-3. They won the last round.
I'm sorry. You're right.
But they've been great in game 2. So is there a through line for that? Do you think any of that applies here?
Well, and look, obviously the Celtics are a different beast, but they got their butts kicked in game 1 in LA. Ended up losing by 12, but it was a blowout game. They got it close late. They got their butts kicked in game 1 in OKC. In both of those series, they won 4 out of 5 after that. Came back, won the series, didn't have to go to a game 7. I do think that this staff has proven that it is very good at adjusting after a game 1. I also think that with Luka and Kyrie, but especially with Luka, the more he sees an opponent, the more comfortable he gets. Not that you're fooling him in game 1, but Luka's, he's a basketball savant. So once he figures out what you're throwing at him, how, he knows how he wants to attack it. He can see, the more he sees of something, the more he can quickly see the cracks in it. And look, the Celtics played a great defensive game in game one. That's the lowest scoring game of the Mavericks this postseason. There are times you can play great defense against Luka and Kyrie, and their skill and their shot-making ability is going to overcome that. That did not happen in game one. If the Mavericks are going to win the series, there's going to have to be times where it's just, one of those great defense, better offense type of situations.
Well, and the Celtics team has struggled a lot in game two.
I didn't even get to that. Both the losses they've had that were game twos here.
And they were both games where the other team shot the lights out here on their home court. And the Celtics, in game against Miami, it was literally probably the single best jump shooting game in the history of the NBA playoffs.
I would say, yeah, the 23 threes from Miami was a franchise record in the playoffs.
That's a little mouse running by over there.
There are mice.
And in the second round of the playoffs against Cleveland, Boston didn't play well. It's the one game they probably played poorly in the playoffs, but the Cavs also shot the lights out. And certainly, as we just talked about, Kyrie had some open looks. Like, Dallas shot quality was better than they shot. Like, they're going to get some threes in this series. And if they have a game where they make a ton of them, they got a chance to put up a ton of points even against Boston. But I do think if you go back to it, at the end of the day, the Celtics did the things they want to do in this series in game one, and the Mavericks struggled to execute against it. And I think it's going to be a challenge unless those two guys are really superlative. I just think it's going to be hard for them to be able to overcome that, just because this Celtics team, it's sort of like the Minnesota-Dallas matchup. The Celtics are probably the worst team to play for the Mavericks in the league, even better than the Clippers, because they've got
the Clippers
got
also
more firepower at both ends than even the Clippers do.
I mean, yeah, and the Clippers didn't have Kawhi. They had a
fully activated Clippers team, because they've always given Dallas trouble.
The Mavericks got through 3 50-plus win teams to get here. I mean, it was not an easy road at all to get here.
Nope.
Beat the number one seed. Beat the Timberwolves right after the Wolves knocked off the defending champs. Now, it was not as difficult of a road as it would have been had the Nuggets won Game 7 at home, I think. But Luka was the first one to say right after they finished off the Wolves, like, we're playing the best team in the NBA now. Kyrie the other night, the way he put it was, we have to have 4 of our greatest games to win this series. They knew that they were going to have to play their best yet to be able to beat the Celtics. They feel like they can do it, but this is a massive it's a historically massive challenge.
Yeah, they won 64 games. They had a net rating of 11.7. They were the dominant team in the NBA all season, and the only thing they hadn't done was get 16 wins, and everybody's sort of waiting for them to trip all over themselves and not get there. And if they win this series, it's going to be a lot like Denver last year, where everybody's going to look back and go, well, yeah, the Celtics should have won the whole time. They were the dominant team in the league this year, just because they haven't gotten over the finish line. That's why I know it's just a Saturday afternoon, I really thought today was a significant thing, because I've seen this team go sideways in less crazy situations than what Jason Kidd tried to put them in today. They handled it perfectly. And I really do think it's emblematic of where the Celtics sit right now from a mental standpoint.
Well, they're sitting at 13 postseason wins. We'll see if they can make it 14 tomorrow. And as a reminder, we'll be back for a pod that we'll post on Monday after the game. So thank you very much to Jackson Agello, who's with us here, and Adi Khan, who's with us here behind the scenes. They've made the trip to Boston as well. They're coming to Dallas.
Here.
There's a lot of cameras.
Work.
There's a lot of light on MacMahon's face. He's very uncomfortable. Thank you, as always, to Stats Willams, who is one of the lifebloods of what we do here at ESPN. Thank you to MacMahon. Thank you to Bontemps. Thank you for watching and listening. We'll talk to you soon.
Adios, amigos.